What's up guys, it's Scoopman5000. Today we're back for another action figure review, and it's been a while, but we're back with some AEW action on Wednesday night. And today we're going to be looking at the entirety of Series 4. We got Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, Sammy Guevara, Matt Hardy, Santana, and Ortiz, Proud and Powerful. Just got these guys recently from Ringside Collectibles. I guess my pre-orders were on some sort of a back order list, so I didn't really get them timely, but I still think it's worth talking about them. From the looks of them in the box, this might be the best series yet. I think right now that title goes to Series 2, but with an updated Cody and Kenny, with some great new appearances from Sammy Guevara and Matt Hardy, and then also getting Proud and Powerful as well, this might be the most solid wave yet. As you can see, I got so much going on it doesn't barely fit in my studio, but from the boxes, as you could tell, it's the same thing we're used to with all of the AEW Unrivaled set. As you can see on the sides here, you're getting some little icons on the bottom of each wrestler. You're getting the AEW logo and then the number that they are in the series, and I put them in the correct order. On the other side, it's just the AEW logo, and you get a little peek at the wrestler images from the front. Then once we get to the back of the packaging, they're always really nice on these AEWs. You get a nice signature in-ring shot and then the rest of the characters. So there is Ortiz. Here we have Santana. Matt Hardy from his debut. We got Sammy Guevara giving a suplex to Cody Rhodes. Here is Cody Rhodes himself. And then finally, Kenny Omega fighting Pac. But that does just about cover the packaging, so we're going to get to it. We're going to open all 6 of these figures at once, and we're going to take a look at AEW Series 4. And here's Kenny Omega out of the packaging to start. We're just going to go in the order that the boxes list them as. For Kenny Omega, he's definitely the lightest on accessories. We start out with his signature posed up hands. These are the ones that come on the figure by default, and they're kind of posed already in the packaging. But then we also do get a pair of gripping, grappling, whatever you want to call them, more open style hands. We can also talk about his entrance jacket. Even though that comes on the figure, you could definitely count that as an accessory. But other than that, we're left with a pretty base Kenny Omega, but one that's such a gigantic improvement over the Wave 1 figure and also the one that came in the ring. I think this is the next one after that, and really night and day. I think the Cody and the Kenny, they are repeats, and people were upset about that. I think it's like, oh, why are we getting Cody and Kenny? But when you look at them now and you look at the Series 1, even the new Series 1 that's coming out with the better skin tones, night and day. This is such a better figure on pretty much every single level. And the main reason for that, of course, is the head sculpt. The likeness here to Kenny Omega is pretty spot on, and it's got a great expression as well. That's something that the original was lacking as well, where he just kind of had a bit of a smiling face, but this is much more dynamic and much more personality that it shows of Kenny Omega, especially the more recent heel Kenny Omega walking around with the Impact in the AEW titles. This is the version you're going to want to get. And also, very important, he's got the blonde in his hair finally, because that original figure had very dark hair. And then other than that, just really appreciate the details here, the eyes and all the paint on the face, really. The facial hair looks good. And there's something about these expressions that we just don't usually get on a Mattel figure. When we do, I always praise it, but pretty much every figure in this wave has a pretty bombastic expression, a pretty accurate expression that shows personality. And when you get a Mattel wave, it's maybe not always like that. But I don't want to be comparing because there are a lot of differences with Mattel figures and AEW, and obviously it took AEW a couple waves to get this way, but more and more these AEW figures are really catching up in a lot of ways to the Mattels, and obviously the articulation and things like that are even better sometimes. So definitely another major player in the market, even more so I think than comparing their audiences or their television ratings. The action figure market especially, really some good competition between WWE and AEW. For the rest of them, I'm sure we've seen this torso before. It might even be the original Kenny Omega, but I can't be sure until we do some comparisons. But for now, it still looks very good. He looks jacked up. He looks like a Jax figure with all these ripping muscles and veins. It's almost a bit unrealistic, but I think I'll let it slide. And then we get to his tights, which has tons of painted detail. And it might be reuse from some other tights. I'm looking at Cody, and it might even be his tights. But the paint really does shine here, so the Omega symbols are all over. Even this gear, I remember him wearing it, and I'm not usually a fan of this gear, but in action figure form, it looks very good. And I'm not sure any other Kennys that are on the way, and it'd also be interesting maybe to swap, because these figures are so easy to just pop in half. If you take this upper body and you put some other tights, if you don't like these, you can probably take your original Kenny and put this torso and this head sculpt on, and that's an interesting prospect. I might try that in the comparisons as well. So overall, some really great stuff for Kenny Omega, and we're just getting started with this wave because I really think it's going to get better and better as we look at each figure. But for now, his articulation, the head's looking up that far, forward that much is pretty good, and then we do get not really a lot of tilt. For the torso, that's a different story. I love the AEW torsos, all the way back, all the way forward and all the way side to side. Shoulders going up, it's swiveling, bicep cut. You do have the double jointed elbows are always good, and then the hinges at the wrist. Legs are splitting, legs don't really kick back, kick forward that far. Double jointed knee, a little bit blocked by the knee pad, but still decent. Cut at the boot, and then we do get a hinge and an excellent ankle rocker as well. For Kenny Omega, here he is with the two previous AEW champions. We got Jon Moxley, and we got a little bit of the bubbly Chris Jericho. And really some unfortunate scale with Jon Moxley. Just way too gigantic of a figure, but he does look good next to the Jericho at least. And then for a night and day comparison, check him out here with the Wave 1 Kenny Omega, complete with a miscolored bicep, and really just not a great figure when you look at it by this comparison. But as I suspected, you are able to swap the tights on the figures. So here is our newest Kenny Omega swapped with the Wave 1 tights. And then I guess, for curiosity's sake, here's the reverse with the older Kenny Omega. But that almost makes this figure look worse. But it is another option if you want this look for Kenny Omega. And now that I say that, you can do the same thing with your Double or Nothing Wave 1 Cody if you want to recreate this look in a non-bloody format. Moving on to Cody, and we get a decent amount of accessories coming with him. We'll start out with that American Nightmare t-shirt that comes on the figure, and underneath is tons of plastic wrap so that way it doesn't stain the figure. And that's for most of these figures with jackets and shirts, which I can appreciate. I think he's the only character that does not get any alternate hands, but he does have an alternate head sculpt. So the one that's on the figure is the newer Cody. We're also getting this on the TNT Champion version, which I haven't picked up yet. But then we're also getting a repaint or a reuse of the Wave 1 sculpt. And I appreciate the effort here, and I love getting alternate heads, and especially once we get to Proud and Powerful, I think those alternate heads are phenomenal. But for this one, I think the new Cody head sculpt is so much leagues better that I don't know why you'd use this one. So it's almost kind of a lost cause, but I guess I can appreciate it. Other than that, I guess we could also go over his weight belt as an accessory, but I'm going to be keeping that on the figure. We got Won't Back Down with the Nightmare Family logo back there. But other than that, here's Cody Rhodes, and I believe this is from a match in 2019. I just threw the box over there, so I'm not going to check. But big thing to note here is that he doesn't have the neck tat, and that's another reason you got to pick up that TNT Champion version. So I guess you could look at this as the last version without a neck tat, or you could just say this is outdated, and it's kind of weird why they'd make you buy 3 different Codys, or, you know, you keep upgrading them, where this is such an upgrade from Series 1, but you really got to get the newest TNT Champion, and that even has better gear that he kind of wears more often. But I still think we have a great Cody figure, and if you're a big fan of Cody, like I always have been, I think you got to get all of them, and Cody is going to be, you know, like the John Cena, the AJ Styles of this AEW line, where we're going to keep getting him, and if you don't want to pick him up, don't pick them up, but we are going to be getting a lot more. Other than that, there's a lot of similarity in terms of sculpt with the original figure, but that head sculpt really just makes this figure leagues better than that one. I will say with a lot of these figures, and it's something they're still figuring out, is that it just looks like there's differences in certain plastic. For me, in this case, it looks like the head and the chest have the same skin tone. When you get to the arms and the lower torso, they look different, and especially under these lights, they look like they have a bit more vibrance to them than the chest and the head. It's not the end of the world, and especially if you're going to be putting on this Thronebreaker t-shirt. And also it's cool that we have this figure that the shirt's depicting, and now we have the figure wearing that shirt. But nonetheless, not a huge deal, but it's something that is noticeable and something that you really don't have on Mattel figures. So if anything, that's the one downfall, the one negative in comparison. But for now, here's another blonde Cody, and with a pair of gear that is pretty distinct. I don't actually remember him wearing these. Usually he's got like the two-tone, and there's usually some lighter colors, but here it's done all in black. And then you have the green and silver kind of details on it, and it looks good, but it's just not iconic Cody Rhodes to me. This figure does have a chase, and I think that is a much more iconic look. And then obviously the TNT Champion, I think, is the most perfect version of Cody that you can get to this date. So I think if you're just going to get one, probably get the TNT Champion. But for now, I'm happy with this, and I'm definitely going to pick up that TNT Champion Cody at another point. Some other things of note, you got the Dream tattoo, and that always looks good. But this is before you got the horrendous neck tattoo. But you do need it because it is accurate, but still, I don't know why he ever did that. The silver paint with some scales kind of going on, and then the green Nightmare Family logos on top of it. This one, I don't know what this logo is. It might be some kind of Zelda throwback or callback or something. I know he does that a lot on his gear. At least he has sometimes. When we get to the boots, we have Pharaoh and we have the Elite logo. We'll quickly do some articulation. The head's looking up that far, forward that much. Again, not a lot of tilt. I will say the neck is also kind of loose on this guy. He's kind of doing a bobblehead thing, which I never like on figures. Same kind of torso. It's a bit slimmer than Kenny Omega's, and it seems kind of tight on the top, but it's getting similar articulation nonetheless. Shoulders going up that far, bicep cut, double jointed elbow, hinges at the wrist. Legs are splitting, they don't really kick back, kick forward that much. Double jointed knee is going to work a bit better because there's no knee pad blocking it. Cut at the boot, then you're getting a hinge and an ankle rocker. For your comparison, here's Cody with the other two versions of him that I own. There's the Blood Brothers and then the Wave 1 version. And it's weird to me that all three of these have very distinct skin tone. Obviously with Series 1 there was an issue and they're correcting that now, but I think the Blood Brothers skin tone is far better and far more consistent. When we look at the new one, he's almost a bit kind of gray looking, if that makes sense. There's a lot more life in this color than in this one. Up next, we got Sammy Guevara, one of the brand new prospects of the line, and that's definitely an exciting thing. For his accessories, he's coming included with not one, but 5 of the Hit Me Up crowd signs, and don't really know the use for these. I mean, it's a cool add-on, but there's just nowhere for the figure to really hold them, and we don't really have like crowd play sets or nothing that we could put these into. But if you're a creative figure photographer, I guess this is just another tool in your arsenal. But for me, these are just going to go in a bin or a Ziploc somewhere, and I'll forget about them. He's also come included with a pair of sunglasses. These are very rubbery, very flexible, and they kind of come out a bit crooked when you put them on the figure. I guess I didn't realize, but he also doesn't have alternate hands. And then finally, the entrance jacket, if you want to count it. It's made of a very soft material, but I will say, if you're not reviewing the figure, if you're not taking him apart, just decide if you want to display him with or without the jacket, and then never touch it again, because it's kind of difficult to get the jacket on and off. You have to remove the hands, and I guess taking it off is easy enough, but putting it back on the figure, because it's so flexible, it's just a little bit difficult. So for me, I have him with the jacket now. I'm going to have to take that off for articulation, and then put it back on for some figure photography maybe. I think when it's all said and done, I'll probably keep him in the jacket, because I don't really pose my figures doing wrestling moves on the shelf, but for the photography, I will be doing that. Nonetheless, we'll get a look at the Sammy Guevara head sculpt, and that's very good. That looks just like Sammy Guevara, and like I said, conveys a lot of personality. It's the face you want to punch kind of look. I also think the fade on the hair is done very well, or at least the 2 different colors. So removing it is simple enough. You definitely got to remove those hands, and then you just kind of have to start peeling, but then again, I always feel like I'm going to rip the jacket in half because it is so soft. I'm also concerned about this material kind of degrading over time, because it definitely feels like a material that would do that, but I guess only time will tell in that case. Go ahead and put his hands back on, and here we are with a ring-ready Sammy Guevara. We can get a better look at his ring gear, and it's very simple. He's got the black wrist tape, the inner circle gear in the black and gold, so you see that logo in the middle. I also got a bit of a stain right here. Pretty unfortunate placement, and it's not really scratching off. Maybe if I wipe that or something. I will say this gold, the bronze light color is very nice. It's got Sammy Guevara on the back. Back of the boots are pretty plain, and then you just get a little bit of detail on the kick pads, kind of some golden trim, but this time only done in a flat color. To go over his articulation, head's looking up pretty good, down pretty good as well. Not a lot of tilt. Torso is similar. Arms going up pretty far. You got the bicep cut, double jointed elbow, and then hinges at the wrist. He does the splits. Pretty impressive. That's definitely the best of the wave so far. Doesn't kick back, kicks forward that far. Double jointed knee, blocked by the knee pads. Do have a boot cut, hinge, and an ankle rocker. For Sammy, there isn't as much to compare him with, so here he is with some Chris Jerichos. Finally, we're halfway there, and we're at the most exciting figure for a lot of people, myself included, when this wave was revealed, and that is Broken Matt Hardy. And this is just really significant. It's his first AEW figure, and now I think he's the only person to have figures from Impact, from WWE, and also from AEW. So that's all pretty impressive stuff. And with that, this might be the best Matt Hardy figure to date. I'm only seeing one problem so far, and that's that he seems very tall. And Matt Hardy, I don't think, is that tall. But when we get to comparisons, and I'll have to do some research, and we'll have that, and we'll have a more clear answer. For now, for his accessories, he comes included in the packaging. He's got his deleting hand and then a kind of clutching hand on the other side. Some alternates you have are one fist and another clutching on the other side. And then we do have a pair of gripping, grappling hands. We'll get into the entrance jacket in a minute, and then the final accessory in the piece de resistance. And probably the most impressive thing is Vanguard 1. And unlike the version we got with the Network Spotlight, where it was just kind of a flat piece of plastic, in this case, they actually recasted the Matt Hardy head sculpt. They made a whole new torso, and I don't even know how to describe this thing, but basically, it's a whole new character. This is a wrestling figure, in my opinion. And that's perfect, because that's how Matt Hardy treats Vanguard 1. He treats it like it's a character, and I think AEW Unrivaled, Jazzware, they did the same thing, because we have a fully sculpted, fully realized Matt Hardy, and this isn't really accurate, I guess, to what we see. Obviously, we're not at the point where we could have full 3D holograms just running around on AEW, but I think what this does do is make it more toyetic, make it go the extra mile, and again, it makes it its own character. And also, not like you'd really need to do this, but the head sculpts are the exact same, and with that you can swap them. You can put the real Matt Hardy on Vanguard 1 and Vanguard 1 on Matt Hardy. And again, I don't know why you'd want to do this, but I'm sure somebody will have a creative reason. But really brilliant stuff, and that's really what it's about when it comes to broken Matt Hardy. And then what we're left with here is pretty phenomenal as well. He's also the other Chase figure in the set. He's kind of got a shorter black coat, and it's all black ring gear. But I think this was the more iconic look. This is really broken Matt Hardy from over all the years, the only difference being that he has a red streak instead of the blonde. If this was blonde, this could be Impact, this could be WWE, but this is the red hair, this is AEW. And of course, now we're at a point where broken Matt kind of isn't on AEW anymore. He's doing the kind of shark businessman thing. But I'm sure we'll be back to this someday. This is definitely Matt Hardy's most memorable, most iconic character. And not to tangent, but still very upset we never got the mower of lawns, the Bray Wyatt compound playset. But I guess this is a step in the right direction with this Vanguard 1. And we might get a rumored golf cart Sammy Guevara playset, which is going to be amazing if that's ever true. For now, looking at the head sculpt, and that's broken Matt. Plain and simple, very good paint and sculpt on there. You got the grays in the beard, you got the red streak on top of the hair, and overall this is a shrunken down mini version of Matt Hardy. And the same thing goes when you get to the jacket. This is definitely the best version. I think this beats all the Mattels in terms of the detail that's on this jacket. The way it attaches is with some plugs down the middle. You can see they come apart pretty easily because again it's a soft kind of material, and already I'm seeing that the torso and the arms and the lower torso all different colors. So I don't know what the big problem is with AEW, but definitely noticeable here. Same thing with the Cody Rhodes. I'm going to be having him displayed with that jacket, so it's not a huge deal to me. But if you're doing photography, if you like your wrestlers in the ring gear, that's going to be annoying, and it's something, again, I don't really see why it always happens, but definitely some discoloration between these two. And like I said, he just seems very tall, very gigantic, and that's kind of been an issue with some of these characters. I know Hangman Page and Dustin Rhodes from Series 2 were way too large, and it seems like Matt Hardy's joining that club for whatever reason. The torso is a unique shape, but I think it's more in the legs. When we get to here, I don't know if it's because they tried to add so much detail, and it just got bigger and bigger as a sculpt. But even real quick, putting him next to Sammy Guevara, maybe that's about right. But to me, he just seems a bit gigantic. But tons of straps, buckles, patterns all over the pants here. And this is the classic broken Matt Hardy look. Like I said, he's worn this gear pretty much exactly in Impact and WWE, and then now in AEW in his debut. But I think this is definitely the best figure version of it so far, other than the scale. We're going to have to look at some WWE Matt Hardys as well, and we'll get a pretty good, solid comparison and really see where the true scale lies with this figure. For his articulation, head's looking up that far, forward that much. You do get a bit of rotation. It's kind of limited. It's not as good as Kenny and Cody. Arms going up that far, bicep cut, double jointed elbow, and then hinges at the wrist. Doesn't kick back, kicks forward that much. He does have the double jointed knee. The hinge is not very good on the feet, and the ankle rocker could be better as well. For Matt Hardy, I wanted to compare him to an elite figure, and with that, I guess it's really not as bad of a height difference as I thought. Maybe Matt Hardy is taller than I thought he was, but even still, he is just a little bit shorter in elite form, and to me that at least looks a little bit more accurate. And also, while we're here to compare the Vanguard 1 versions, obviously this one's in green, but such a difference. I mean, the drone you can see is almost exactly the same, but if anything, this is the more accurate one, but I think this is the more toyetic, fun version. And finally, here's the runner-up, the second to last figure, and that is Santana of the Proud and Powerful. And when we get to these Proud and Powerful figures, these are definitely two of the most impressive out of the set and out of the whole line of AEW so far. And part of that is because of the plethora of accessories and also the alternate heads. So for Santana, we'll start out with the hands. He's got gripping hands on the figure, and then he's got his pointing trigger style hands. These are just kind of something he does in the end of his match or in the entrance. For the alternate heads, we do have a stock head, and this is classic Santana. He's got the big bandana going around his forehead, but then we're getting one with the eye patch and a bit more of a crazed expression, but otherwise it is similar. And then we're getting the Rock in a sock, and as far as I can tell, this is the first ever stuffed sock action figure accessory. And then finally we're getting the Puerto Rico flag that he can wear around his neck, and it's just a shame. I think you probably got to add some water to this if you really want to pose it on the figure, because it kind of just wants to straighten out. So when you try to put it around the neck, you definitely got to like put the figure's arms over it and kind of secure it in place. It's not as free-flowing as a real flag would be. But that's a pretty good amount of accessories, and then when we get to the actual base figure, tons of detail and tons of sculpt and everything in between. So we already looked at the head sculpt, but we'll get a bit of a better look at that. I think the likenesses on this whole set have really been phenomenal, and he is no different, Santana. You can see the chest tattoo looks good, tons of color. You got blue, red, green, and then the black outlines, and then his cross tattoo as well. That goes down into the bicep. It starts out on the shoulder, and that looks pretty good. The only thing is once you start articulating, it kind of separates it a bit. Other than that, pretty stock, pretty plain. You got one elbow pad on the left, the white wrist tape. Really nice touch is the kind of strapped down suspenders. You got kind of a golden underneath here to the suspenders, and you can see that on the back. It's black. On the front it's gold, and then the golden straps as well. And you even have some white details for kind of the buckles. And then other than that, I guess these are kind of not as expensive because it is all cast in black, but still there's plenty of sculpted details here. These kick pads look like they're the same as Kenny Omega's as far as I can tell, but they do look different because there is a lack of paint. And really this whole set has had so much new sculpt, so much accessories and paint. I can give this a pass, and this is accurate to what they're wearing. They're wearing all black ring gear, or at least Santana is, but there isn't as much to talk about as a result. First articulation, head's looking up that far, forward that much. You got all sorts of rotation going on here. He's doing the splits, and these overalls are going to get out of the way. Shoulders going up that far, bicep cut, double jointed elbow, a bit limited by the elbow pad, or at least it shoves it onto the bicep. You have the upper thigh cut there, the double jointed knee, blocked by the knee pad, is there, but it is a bit tough to get to. Then you have hinges and ankle rocker as well. And then finally, that brings us to Ortiz. And other than maybe the excitement of getting a Matt Hardy, the much needed updates of Kenny and Cody, this might be the best overall figure of the wave. There's so much detail, so much accessories, and really a lot of fun factor with this guy. So we'll start out, we'll get this out of the way. The head sculpts are so wildly different. This one's with the big hair, the free-flowing hair that he has, and a great expression as well. But then we get a more traditional Ortiz, where he's kind of got the slick down hair, he's got the bandana, and he's got a screaming head sculpt for his entrance, which again, I love that on a figure. So two very unique expressions on each of these, and unique hairstyles. They almost look like different people. For his hands, we start out with some grappling hands, some kind of posed up hands that are just plain skin tone, and then we're getting the glove hands. One of them on the right is the Puerto Rico flag, and then one of them's in black. And then finally, we're getting the sandal, the chancla, that he's going to carry around, and I don't know if I butchered that or not, or if I even said that right, but that is what it is. And again, just some really funny, great accessories on these guys. And then once we get to the base figure himself, tons of detail as well. And I love the inner circle t-shirt on him. I think that just separates him a bit more, and I think he looks a bit more unique. Some great tattoo work as well on here. You can see it's only the bottom half of the bicep, and then a little bit of the wrist, cut off by the wrist tape. Here you got another kind of side of the bicep that is mostly cut off. There is sculpt actually. We're usually on something like a Mattel, not to keep mentioning them, but this would just be painted, but in this case, the sleeves are sculpted on there. You got some fabric kind of design, and he's got a similar kind of suspender piece, but in this case, we have a flag hanging off the right side of him, and that kind of goes along with his glove. And once we bring this in, I think the upper legs, the pants are similar, but then he's kind of got more chino style, or at least they're rolled up. He's got some knee pads over the legs, which are bigger, and then you gotta love the toe shoes on Ortiz. Again, just something super unique and super sculpted, tons of detail on there, and overall just a really fun figure. For his articulation, I'm sure it'll differ if you have different head sculpts. This one's probably got more movement, but we'll try it with the more challenging one. Head's looking up that far and forward that much. Torso's got great range of motion. That might even be the best of the wave. The arms are going up that far. You got the bicep cut, the double jointed elbow, the hinges at the wrist. Here he is doing the splits. You do have the upper thigh cut, double jointed knee. The boot cut is pretty seamlessly hidden, and then the hinge and the ankle rocker at the foot. Finally, we'll combine the comparisons for Santana and Ortiz. We'll bring them in with the Lucha Bros to have some tag team action for your AEW display. I think all of this looks great together, and these are definitely four of my favorites in the whole line so far. And then finally, to almost complete the inner circle, here's a little bit of the bubbly Jericho and Sammy Guevara. We're only missing Jake Hager now, who's coming out pretty soon, and that'll complete the original inner circle lineup. And overall, that does it for the whole set of AEW Unrivaled Series 4. If you made it this far, thanks for sticking through the whole video. And overall, this might be my new favorite set. That title went to Series 2, but now that I look at these guys and all the improvements that have been made, really impressive stuff all across the board. I think each one of these figures is really almost perfect. I think the only thing, again, is kind of the weird discoloration. Some of the plastic quality is strange on these figures, but what they are able to execute, what they do in sculpting and paint details, really is phenomenal stuff. And if they can ever fix that plastic issue. And if they can ever fix kind of the weird plastic issues, I think these are going to be near perfect wrestling figures. And I think it's great that we have multiple companies making wrestling figures. Even outside of this, we have Super 7s coming out, we have Boss Fight Studios, and that's not to mention all their different retro figures coming out and the micro brawlers. So wrestling figures really in a healthy place right now, and that's very cool. And it feels good being back doing some wrestling content. That's kind of the bread and butter of this channel, but it's just kind of been a little slow, and I haven't been keeping up maybe as much. It's hard to keep up with all these different figure lines and try to make videos in a timely way, so better late than never, but I'm glad to have looked at this set. As always, I'm going to leave this off with some figure photography, and you can see my library on Instagram, scoopman_5000, but that does do it for this video, and the next time I think I'm going to be looking at the newest Elite set from WWE, so if you're a wrestling fan, stay tuned. If you're an action figure fan, all the things in between, definitely check out the archives, and until next time, I'll see you in the next action figure review.